to teach the truth. And then they, in turn, will teach the truth. Therefore, you have a positive domino effect. Let me show you what I mean by that. 2 Timothy 1, verse 5. This is Paul speaking to Timothy. He says this, I remember your genuine faith, for you share the faith that first filled your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice. And I know that same faith continues strong in you. Notice Paul mentions Timothy's grandmother and his mother. And given how Paul worded this, I believe that the grandmother was raised in a non-Christian home, a non-believing home, but came to believe in Jesus later. And I say that because Paul doesn't mention anybody else before her. In fact, he says she is the first. For you share the faith that first filled your grandmother Lois. So what's interesting here is that if my theory is correct, Timothy's grandmother broke the negative cycle. She stopped the negative dominoes from falling because nobody else in her family believed until it got to her. She believed in Jesus when nobody else did. Then, after she comes to believe, she teaches Eunice all about God. Eunice believes and teaches Timothy, and he comes to believe. So understand, Lois broke the negative domino effect, but started positive. We go back to Psalm 78. He commanded our ancestors to teach them to their children, so the next generation might know them, even the children not yet born, and they in turn will teach their own children. You see, the domino effect is a very real thing. Now, according to church history, Timothy never had any kids. So he can't pass on the knowledge of God to his own children. So we may think that this is the end of the domino effect. However, you go back to 2 Timothy, it says, now teach these truths to other trustworthy people who will be able to pass them on to others. Timothy may not have been able to pass on the knowledge of Jesus to his own kids, but he was commanded to pass it on to anybody who would listen. Thus, the domino effect is still in play today. It is still being tipped over from things that were going on thousands of years ago. The truth is, we don't know how far our dominoes are going to go. We have no idea how far our influence will go. You think about this in terms of Timothy. Lois teaches Eunice, Eunice teaches Timothy, Timothy becomes the bishop of Ephesus. As bishop, he ends up, influencing thousands of people for Jesus. So, through transitive law, and I know you weren't expecting math problems today, but through transitive law, if A equals B, B equals C, and A equals C, then Lois influenced thousands of lives, and may not have ever been. Let me give you a more personal example of this. Okay, a couple of months ago, I mentioned a man named Carl Kerner, one of my sons. Carl was a man who led my grandfather to the Lord. Okay? My grandfather would then, years later, become the pastor of his own church, who would impact lots and lots of people over the years. Dad becomes a pastor years later, takes on all these different churches, impacts lots and lots of people. And I become a pastor, trying to impact lots and lots of people. Carl Kerner became the catalyst that set off multiple domino strands, crossing many state lines over 3 generations. And I don't think he ever had a clue that's what was coming. He just wanted to be an impact on something. But his impact led to 3 generations of impacting more people. Let me share with you another interesting domino thing. In 1886, a man named Harry Monroe greatly influenced another young man named Billy Sunday. Harry was a street preacher. He was literally out in the street preaching to whoever would listen. And one day, Billy Sunday listened. As a result, Billy Sunday becomes a preacher. He becomes an evangelist. And he ends up influencing a man named Mordecai Ham, who ultimately comes to know the Lord because of Billy Sunday. And in 1934, Mordecai Ham helped lead Billy Graham to the Lord. And the rest, they say, is history. But think about this. A sermon done in 1886 set up a chain reaction that would ultimately affect millions upon millions of people all over the world. And continues to this day. Harry Monroe had no clue that one of his sermons would be the catalyst that would help start Billy Graham. I found this next stat in Lifeway Research. which means that you can be a catalyst. You can be the starting point of somebody's growth. Who knows? You reach one person, they reach it. They reach it. You got a positive domino effect. And at some point in time, that domino effect will keep going. You may actually find out that somebody you influence somebody else becomes the next big brand. What we do know is something has to start. So be a catalyst. Start something. Let's go. You already come today. Just keep the catalyst for another second. You know, the domino effect is a very real thing. But you know, there needs to be a starting point. There needs to be a catalyst. Somebody has to take over the world. Eunice stopped negative dominoes from falling and chose to believe and then started a whole other chain that would ultimately go on to affect millions of people. Never had a clue. You know, that's the power of the domino. So you know, I pray that everyone here today will share the message of the gospel to someone. Plant those seeds, push over that domino. Let's see where it takes us. Keep us safe,